A very good morning, our eminent guest of the day, Professor Dr. Joseph Dorairaj, Professor of English and former Vice Chancellor, Gandhigram University, Tamil Nadu. Reverend Father Dr. A. Rex Angelo, SJ, Principal St. Xavier's College, Jaipur. Reverend Father Dr. Sherry George, SJ, Vice Principal, St. Xavier's College, Jaipur. All my dear colleagues and participants. As you all know, that India has one of the largest and diverse education systems in the world, having a deep concern on the quality and relevance of higher education. So to address these concerns, various steps have been initiated and NAC, National Assessment and Accreditation Council, is one among them, contributing to nation building, skill development of students, and converting higher education institutions into centers of excellence. So under the able guidance of our management, the Internal Quality Assurance Cell, IQAC, of St. Xavier's College, Jaipur, has organized this NAC induction workshop on NAC assessment and preparedness. The aim of this induction workshop is to gain complete knowledge about the 7 criteria of assessment and accreditation, which is very well needed as our renowned institution is just in the preparatory phase for the same. We also aim to derive an understanding and on how to attain the quality status by fulfilling the 5 core values of NAC's vision, that is contributing to nation building, fostering global competitiveness among students, inculcating a value system among students, promoting the use of technology, and quest for excellence. During this entire induction workshop, we all shall have a clear understanding of preparation of SSR, that is the self-study report, which is actually the backbone of the entire process of accreditation and all the 7 key indicators of evaluation. So before moving further, I wish to invite our principal, Reverend Father Dr. A. Rex Angelo, for a welcome address.
Good morning, Professor Joe. Joe, are you able to hear me?
Father, good morning. Nice meeting you online. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. So already we had some technical glitch and then it has eaten away some of our time. I don't want to stand in the middle of you and our staff who are very eager to listen to you. When we talk about quality, as Dr. Shika rightly pointed out, India has consistently been known for quantity. Of course, quality can be shown only in quantity. It cannot be shown in the abstract. On the other hand, in the top 500 universities in the world, hardly India figures anywhere. So even in the country, though we have A+, A++ institutions, they are not able to compete with the academic and intellectual standards of the world institutions. So the NAC has come in handy to set in certain trend in quality and excellence. And when we think of such an induction workshop, we have to think of the best persons to motivate us, to inspire us, and to guide us. So naturally, Professor A. Joseph Dorairaj, who was the former Vice Chancellor of the deemed university, Gandhigram University, one of the famous universities in the South, and he is also a professor of English. And I had the privilege of studying my UG with him in the same St. Joseph's College, which is about 175 years old. So we are very eager to listen to you, Professor Joseph Dorairaj. Though this is not my first time to listen to you, I am very happy to invite you to be part of this program. And I am very sure you will be able to inspire and motivate our staff. So a warm welcome to you. Now over to you, Professor A. Joseph Dorairaj.
Thank you very much, Father. Dr. Bakshi, shall I start?
Yes, Father. Sir, we have made you the co-host. If you wish to share something from your screen or maybe...
I'm sharing my screen. Good morning, dear friends. I'm happy to meet you online. At the outset, I would like to thank the principal of St. Xavier's College, Jaipur, my own friend and my batchmate at St. Joseph's College, Trichy, Dr. A. Rex Angelo S.J. Dear Father, thank you very much for this warm invitation. In fact, you invited me in person to your institution, but because of this pandemic and other restrictions, I am unable to make it to your institutions. Maybe later, I shall certainly visit your institution, and I am sure there will be an occasion for it.
You can come as a NAC peer team member.
Oh my goodness. Father George, the Vice Principal of the college, Professor Yashwardhan Singh, Coordinator, IQAC, Dr. Bakshi, the Program Coordinator, the heads of departments and faculty members at St. Xavier's College, Jaipur. Good morning to all of you. At the outset, I would like to thank the institution, in particular Father Principal, for inviting me to talk on NAC assessment and accreditation. You call it induction workshop to prepare you for your first cycle of NAC assessment and accreditation. Even though it is a little early, I take this opportunity to wish all of you the very best in your first cycle of assessment and accreditation. And I am sure at least by next year, you would be submitting your SSR and you would be getting your grades. So my best wishes to you. So dear friends, I'll be doing 2 sessions with you. So today it is an overview of NAC. And tomorrow, again, I meet you tomorrow for 1.5 hours. Tomorrow, it will be more institution specific. As an institution, what should St. Xavier's College, Jaipur do when you go in for your first cycle of NAC assessment and accreditation? So that is for tomorrow. But for today, it will be an overview, a broad picture of NAC and how NAC works and what are the various indicators. I'll be making a PowerPoint presentation. I have been asked to speak for 1.5 hours, 90 minutes, and this is how I have divided my presentation. So my presentation has been divided into 5 units. In the first unit, I will be answering 2 questions. I'll be addressing 2 questions. The first question is, what is assessment? And the second question that I would answer in the first part of my presentation is, what is accreditation and what is the need, or where is the need to go for assessment and accreditation? So this is the first part of my presentation. Now, in the second part of my presentation, at the international level, at the global level, what are the agencies, who are the players who are involved in the process of assessment and accreditation? In fact, at the beginning, when your principal made his opening remarks, he made a mention that even though we have colleges that have got A+ and A++, A++, unfortunately, they do not figure in the top 500 bracket at the international level. So who are the international players who are involved in the business of assessment and accreditation? That will be the focus of the second part of my presentation. Now, after talking about the international players, I would like to focus on the national player, the key Indian player, that is NAC. I would be talking about when was NAC established, what was the mandate. In fact, Dr. Bakshi referred to the core values of NAC. So I'll be talking about, I'll be highlighting NAC and its mandate in the third part of the presentation. So the first 3, they are in a way introductory. Now the core of my presentation is in the fourth part. I'll be devoting considerable time for the fourth part of my presentation, where I would be talking about the 7 criteria that NAC employs, the various key indicators and the metrics, both quantitative and qualitative. So this is the fourth part of my presentation, and this would be the core of my presentation today. Then towards the end, very briefly, I want to give you an idea of how grades, how the score is calculated and how the grade is arrived at. Okay, fine. So dear friends, this is the overview of my presentation. So my presentation is in 5 parts. The key part of my presentation is the 4th unit, where I would be talking about the assessment criteria or the assessment indicators of NAC. Now the first part, I have 3 questions to answer. What are the 3 questions I have to answer in the first part of my presentation? What is assessment? What is accreditation? And more importantly, why should a college or a university subject itself for assessment and accreditation by NAAC? So these are the three questions that I would like to answer in the first part of my presentation. Now, the first question, what is assessment? Now, assessment is evaluation, performance evaluation of a college or a university. It could be an autonomous college, it could be an affiliated college, it could be a constituent college, or it could be a state university or a central university or a private university. How well is the college functioning? How well is the university functioning? So assessment is to find out how well the institution is functioning. So it is a performance evaluation of a college or a department or a college or a university, either as one single unit or as individual units. In the sense, the college could be assessed as one unit, or the Department of English or the Department of Economics or the Department of Business Administration could be assessed. So what is assessment? Performance evaluation of a college or a university. This is at the broader level. At the micro level, the various units, the various departments, and the various centers that constitute a college or a university. Now, how is this assessment done? How is this assessment undertaken? What is the methodology that is followed? Based on established criteria and benchmarks. In the case of NAAC, we have 7 criteria, whereas in the case of NIRF, they have 5 criteria. Okay, so this is the first slide. The question is, what is assessment? So assessment is the performance evaluation of a college based on NAAC's 7 criteria. Now, what is accreditation? Now, accreditation, now when a student write the semester exams, or when a student writes a semester exams, after the semester exams, the student waits for the publication of results, waits for the declaration of results. So in the case of NAAC, what happens is, once the performance evaluation of a college is done, then what happens is certification of quality. This is a good college, this is a bad college, this is an average college, or this is an extraordinary college. So certification of quality is accreditation. And this certification in the case of NAAC is valid for 5 years, whereas in the case of NIRF, it is valid for only 1 year. In the case of NAAC, it is valid for 5 years. Now we come to the third question, an important question. Why should a college or why should a university submit itself for assessment and accreditation? So what are the various reasons, or what are the various factors, and what is the justification for a college like St. Xavier's Jaipur that it should undertake assessment and accreditation, that it should submit itself for NAAC assessment and accreditation? Now, I would like to address this question at various levels. Now, for the institution, for the college, now St. Xavier's College, Jaipur, they want to know how strong they are when it comes to teaching and research. They want to find out how well they are doing in terms of co-curricular activities and extracurricular activities. Now, the principal also wants to know what are the roadblocks, what are the hurdles, what are the limitations. So in other words, as an individual, as a person, if I want to know my strong points, and at the same time, if I want to know my weak points, my limitations, I should look into myself. I should introspect. Similarly, an institution, whether it is a college or a university, wants to find out what are the strong points and what are the weak points, what are the strengths and what are the limitations, what are the roadblocks, what are the hurdles, what are the challenges. Then it should do self-introspection. Okay, so therefore we come back to the question. The question is, why should a college submit itself for assessment and accreditation? The answer is, when you go for assessment and accreditation, you find out where you stand, how you fare well, what are your strong points, what are your weak points, what are your strengths, what are your limitations. So therefore, this is an exercise in self-introspection. Now, for the other stakeholders, who are the other stakeholders? Parents are stakeholders, teachers are stakeholders, the general public, they are also part of the stakeholders, the potential employers, they are stakeholders. So how does assessment and accreditation benefit them? Okay, Now they want to know the credibility of the institution. They want to know the quality of the institution. Now this is July, this is admission time. So parents want to admit their children in the best colleges. So how do they find out whether this is a good college or a bad college or an average college? How do they find out? Okay, so the NAAC assessment and accreditation, the NAAC certification is a credible indicator of the quality of an institution. For instance, people in Jaipur, they know, oh, St. Xavier's College, it is a good college. So therefore, I can get my son admitted there. I can get my daughter admitted. Okay, because they know the credibility of the college. They know the quality of the institution. Okay. But now after you go for NAAC assessment and accreditation, imagine you've got A or A plus or A double plus, then the public will be convinced, oh, look at this college, they've got A plus. So it should certainly be a very good institution. So therefore, for the general public, the certification matters a lot. The certification means a lot, and it helps them when it comes to admission of their children to various programs. Now, an external agency like ICSSR or DST or UG they want to fund certain projects. Okay. Now, they do not send funds just like that. They want to find out the quality of the institution. They wanted to ensure the credibility of the institution. Okay, this college has got A plus, so therefore it should be a good institution. So therefore funds could be given to this college and they will use it properly. And when students apply for internship, either to other universities or for companies, they look for NAAC assessment and accreditation as one of the indicators. And potential employers also look for the NAAC certification for recruitment. Oh, this candidate has come from an A plus institution. So therefore the quality of education should be good. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen, this is an important question. Why should a college or why should a university submit itself for assessment and accreditation? This can be answered at different levels, at two different levels for the institution. It is an exercise in self-introspection. The institution comes to realize what are its strong points and what are its weak points. And for the various stakeholders, it helps them in different ways. So dear friends, this is the first part of my presentation. So I have answered three questions. What is assessment? What is accreditation? And what is the need for assessment and accreditation? Now, in the second part of my presentation, I would like to talk about the three key agencies or the three key players at the international level who are involved in the business of assessment and accreditation. Now we have three international agencies. Two are European or Western agencies, and the third one is an Asian player. Now it all started in 2004 with Times Higher Education. They are based in Britain. UK-based agency. So Times Higher Education, and every year they release what is known as Times Higher Education World University Rankings. Please remember two things. Number one, they are based in UK and they are in operation from 2004. They are the first ones to enter the field and their rankings are credible. Now there is another Western player, Quacquarelli Siemens. They are in operation from 2010 and they release what is known as QS World University Rankings. They are also based in UK. And what is interesting is this Quacquarelli Siemens, this particular agency was earlier part of Times Higher Education. In 2010, they broke away from Times Higher Education and they constituted their own system. So Times Higher Education, Quacquarelli Siemens, and we have an Asian player. The Asian player is a Chinese player, Shanghai Ranking Consultancy. They are in operation from 2013, and every year they release what is known as academic ranking of world universities. Now in the next three slides, I will give you an idea of how these international agencies work or operate. What are the various criteria that they employ when it comes to assessment and accreditation of institutions. Now, the first one, the British player, Times Higher Education, they assess a college or they assess a university on the basis of 5 criteria. And what are the 5 criteria and what is the percentage of weightage allotted to each criterion? Now, according to Times Higher Education, the first criterion is teaching, for which they get 30% weightage. The second criterion is research, the volume of research, the number of books published, the number of papers published, and not only that, reputation, in what kind of journals they publish, what kind of press undertake the publication of their books, and what is the income that they generate through their research. So that is the second criterion, and the weightage that is allotted for the second criterion is 30. Now the third criterion is an important criterion. It is not enough that you write books. It is not enough that you write articles. Your articles are published in journals. But the question is, how many times did other researchers refer to your book? How many times did other researchers refer to your articles? And how many times did they quote, did they cite from your publications, known as citation? Particularly in science, this is a very important concept. So that is the third criterion, and the weightage that is allotted for this criterion is 30%. The fourth one is, how many international students are on campus and how many international faculty are on the roll. So they talk of the international character or the international outlook, and the weightage that is allotted for this particular criterion is 7.5. And finally, we have the last criterion, the fifth criterion. It is called industry outcome, for which the weightage is 2.5, wherein we talk of the signing of MOUs and knowledge transfer. So dear friends, this is Times Higher Education. They are the first one to enter the business, and on the basis of 5 criteria, they assess colleges and universities across the world. Now, the next agency that is in business is another British player, Quakerelli Siemens. They assess institutions, they evaluate institutions on the basis of 6 criteria. Times Higher Education, they employ 5. Whereas QS, Quakerelli Siemens, they employ 6 criteria. So what are the 6 criteria and what is the weightage that is allotted for each criteria? The first one is academic reputation. And for them, this is very important. So therefore, 40% of the weightage is allotted for academic reputation. For instance, the University of Oxford enjoys good academic reputation. The University of Yale, one of the Ivy League institutions in the United States of America, that enjoys a very good reputation. So academic reputation, academic credibility, that is the first criterion. The weightage is 40. Employer reputation, that is the second criterion. The weightage is 10. Then the faculty-student ratio, 20%. Faculty-student ratio. If there is only one teacher for 100 students, as it happens in many colleges in India, then it is a poor ratio, because there will be very little interaction between teachers and students, because the classroom is very big, 80 students, 90 students, 100 students. So ideally, it should be one teacher for 25 to 30 to 35 students, so that there is more of interaction between the teacher and the students. Then the fourth one talks of citations per faculty. As I said earlier, how many books have you published and how many journal articles have you published? But more importantly, how many researchers, how many academicians refer to your citations, refer to your books, refer to your articles? Then criterion 5 and criterion 6, they talk of international presence on your campus in terms of faculty, criterion 5, and in terms of students, that is criterion 6. So this is about Quakerelli Siemens. They assess colleges and universities employing 6 criteria. Next, we come to the Asian player, the only Asian player, the Chinese agency, Shanghai. What do they release? Academic Ranking of World Universities, ARWU, Academic Ranking of World Universities. Times Higher Education, they employ 5 criteria. Quakerelli Siemens, they employ 6 criteria, whereas the Chinese player, they employ 4 criteria. What are the 4 criteria? Number 1, quality of education. And how do they measure the quality of education? They would ask you, among your alumni, among your former students, how many have won Nobel Prizes and how many have won Fields Medal? Fields Medal is given for outstanding performance in the area of mathematics. For mathematics, there is no Nobel Prize. Instead, you get a Fields Medal. So this is the first criterion. The second criterion, quality of faculty. How well are the faculty doing? And how do you measure it? They measure it according to two indicators. Number one, how many of the staff members, how many of the faculty have won outstanding awards or medals or achievements, that is Nobel and Fields Medal, and highly cited research, and how many of them have published papers in Nature and Science. Okay, Nature and Science, as we all know, they are the topmost journals, and one is from UK, the other is from USA. Both are weeklies, and they have a citation, they have an impact factor of roughly 30. Then the third criterion is research output, for which the weightage is 20. And the last criterion is per capita performance, for which the weightage is 10. And how do they calculate per capita performance? The weighted scores of the above indicators, the above three indicators, quality of education, quality of faculty, and research output, divided by number of full-time staff. So ladies and gentlemen, that was the second part of my presentation. So in the second part of the presentation, I drew your attention to the three key players at the international level. And who are the three key players at the global level in the international arena? We have Times Higher Education and we have Cocorelli Cements, and they both are European players, and we have an Asian player, a Chinese player. So all the three, annually they release ranking of academic institutions across the globe, and they are doing a fantastic job because their rankings are credible and they are accepted all over the world. I have talked about the international player. Now I would like to move on to the national player. At the national level, we have two key agencies, we have two key players. We have NAC, and NAC was established in 1994, and we have NBA. NBA also was established in 1994. In 1984, the government of India established NAC, National Assessment and Accreditation Agency, that evaluates colleges and universities across India, and the headquarters is in Bangalore. Please remember, the headquarters is not in Delhi. The headquarters of UGC is in Delhi, but the headquarters of NAC is in Bangalore. Very recently, 6 or 7 years ago, they opened their Delhi office, but otherwise the headquarters is in Delhi, and currently the director of NAC is Professor Sharma. So this is about NAC. And NBA, the expansion of NBA is National Board of Accreditation. Like NAC, NBA also was established in the year 1994. And the important difference between NAC and NBA is NAC assesses colleges and universities all over the country, but NBA also assesses colleges and universities all over the country, but the focus is technical programs. So if it is an engineering institution, if it is a management institute, you're not assessed by NAC, instead you are assessed by NBA. Now, very briefly, what is the vision of NAC? And in the following slide, I'll be talking about what are the core values of NAC. Now, what is the vision of NAC? Okay, now you look at the first three. I have printed them in blue. To undertake periodic assessment and accreditation of institutions of higher education. So therefore, the primary job, the key mandate, the key responsibility of NAC is to assess colleges and universities situated all over the country. So that is the primary responsibility of NAC. So NAC is meant for assessing and accrediting colleges and universities all over the country. And they do not stop with assessment and evaluation, because once you do this assessment, once you do this evaluation, you find out what are the problems with colleges, what are the problems with universities, what are the roadblocks, what are the challenges. So you are in a position to do something to improve the academic environment, so that quality could be improved, quality could be enhanced, and quality could be strengthened. So therefore, the second mandate of NAC is to stimulate the academic environment. And why should the academic environment be stimulated or strengthened? So that quality is promoted in terms of teaching and learning, and also in terms of research in higher education. Now, NAC is a small organization. Okay, and assessors are there. We have hundreds of assessors for NAC. But in spite of this, they cannot be evaluating colleges and universities every year. So that is why, because they do not have the human resources, they do not have the technical support to visit colleges and universities every year for assessment and accreditation and for evaluation. So that is why NAC visits colleges and universities only once in 5 years. That doesn't mean NAC will come only once in 5 years. So for the rest of the period, you can relax. No, NAC encourages self-evaluation. NAC encourages accountability. NAC encourages autonomy and innovations in higher education. In other words, NAC would tell you, look here, St. Xavier's College, Jaipur, we would visit you once in 5 years. But for the remaining period, the other years, you have your IQAC, you have your management. They will conduct a self-evaluation. Okay, so what is known as academic and administrative audit. I am sure this is happening regularly at your institution. Okay, so with internal staff members and with external staff members, you can organize, and this is one of the prime responsibilities of IQAC. You should be organizing academic audit and administrative audit. So NAC would encourage this. Now, NAC also undertakes research related to assessment, related to consultancy, and related to training programs. And they also support colleges. Okay, so once you complete your first cycle of assessment and accreditation, you can think of a one-day seminar or a one-day workshop on something related to quality, and you can approach financial support of NAC, and I am sure they would advance you some grants for conducting such training programs. And NAC also encourages that you collaborate with other stakeholders of higher education for quality evaluation, promotion, and sustenance of quality. So very broadly, this is the vision of NAC, but the primary responsibility of NAC is periodically, that is once in 5 years, visit colleges, visit universities, and find out how well they are doing. So to undertake a performance evaluation of colleges and universities periodically is the basic vision of NAC. And Dr. Bakshi has already spoken about the core values of NAC. So what are the core values of NAC? They are 5 in number, contributing to national development, particularly through quality in education, higher education, fostering global competencies among students. Some of our students may go to France, may go to Germany, may go to South Africa, may go to UK, may go to the United States of America. Okay, now they have to adapt themselves to that particular environment. So which means we should have given good training. We should have inculcated some good skills in those students so that they are able to adapt themselves to an international context and also do well in an international environment, for which we need to foster in them global competencies like multiculturalism, good thinking skills, good writing skills, good communication skills. And the third core value of NAC is to inculcate in them a strong sense of ethic and a good value system. I am sure St. Xavier's is already imparting a sound value system for its students, and the Jesuits are known for their value system. And promoting the use of technology these days because of the pandemic. We have been using technology, the students and the faculty members, we are using technology. So NAC would underline, NAC would emphasize that technology is brought to the classrooms in a big manner, and this is already happening. And NAC suggests that we should always strive for excellence. We should always aim for excellence, quest for excellence. So dear friends, this is the third unit of my presentation, the third part of my presentation. While in the second unit, I talked about the international players. In the third unit, in the third part of my presentation, I have talked about the national player. The key national player is NAC. So what is the vision of NAC? What is the mandate? What is the key responsibilities of NAC? And what are the values that NAC promotes? What are the values that NAC fosters? So I have talked about it. Now let me go to the fourth part of my presentation. And as I said earlier at the outset, this would constitute the core of my presentation. This is the core element of my presentation. Now, you are teachers at St. Xavier's College, Jaipur. Now, what is the prime duty of St. Xavier's College, Jaipur, or for that matter, any college, any institution in any part of India? What is the responsibility of a higher educational institution? What is the mandate given to colleges? So if I were to ask the teachers, what are you supposed to do? What is your prime job? What is your prime responsibility? So you would tell me, as teachers, as faculty members, our prime job, our key responsibility is to share our knowledge with students, to transfer knowledge, to disseminate knowledge. So therefore, the primary responsibility of any college or any university, not only in India, but across the world, is teaching and learning. And what transpires or what is transacted in teaching and learning is sharing of knowledge or transfer of knowledge or dissemination of knowledge. Okay, fine. Now, the prime responsibility of a college is teachers should share their knowledge with their students. So teaching and learning. Now, in addition to teaching, even though you are only a college and not a university, even though you are only an affiliated college and not an autonomous college, still you are supposed to undertake some research. Okay, I was very careful with the word some. Because you are not a university, because you are not a central university, or because you are not an IIT, because you are not an NIT or IISc, nobody expects you to do research at a high level. But that does not mean that you can excuse yourselves from doing research. As an institution, as a college, yours is an affiliated college. Okay, so therefore your primary responsibility is teaching and sharing your knowledge. But at the same time, you're also required to do some research. Okay, and all colleges and all universities, in addition to teaching and in addition to doing research and undertaking research, they are supposed to extend their services to their neighborhood. It could be a slum in the city or it could be nearby villages, because extension and outreach activities are very important. We cannot live in ivory towers. We cannot cocoon ourselves from the harsh realities outside the academic environment. There is a slum close to the college. There are some villages 5 kilometers outside the college or 10 kilometers outside the college. So we cannot be a pocket of excellence in isolation. So we have certain responsibilities to our neighborhood. Okay, so we need to undertake, our faculty members, our students, they need to undertake some extension and outreach activities, and thereby doing something for the neighborhood. So that is the third key responsibility. Now, the fourth one is, it is not enough that we teach them academically. In addition to academics, we need to train them so that they become an all-round individual. So therefore, we need to impart an integrated education or a holistic education. They should be good in academics, they should be good in culturals, they should be good in sports, they should also have a sense of helping the neighborhood, extension and outreach activities. So in other words, an all-round development, holistic education. And finally, ultimately, the question is, why do students come to colleges? Why do students go to universities? Why do they want degrees, BA or MA or MCOM or MBA? Finally, they want to get a good job. They want to be employed. So therefore, one of the duties, one of the responsibilities of higher educational institutions, whether they are colleges or universities, is to prepare them, to make them employable so that they can take up a job. So ladies and gentlemen, this is an important slide. And in this slide, I have outlined the major responsibilities of colleges and universities, particularly college. So therefore, an institution like St. Xavier's, what is your mandate? What should you do? You are supposed to do teaching, and in addition to teaching, some research, and involving all faculty members and all students in extension and outreach activities, thereby giving the students a holistic education and ultimately making them good citizens, and citizens who can take up jobs and settle down in life happily. So this is the mandate given to colleges and universities. Now, how do you achieve this? How do you achieve this? That is a very important question. It is around this the NAC has framed the 7 criteria. For good teaching, what you need is a good curriculum. If you want to transact curriculum, if you want to share your knowledge, then you need a good curriculum, a good syllabus. That is the first criterion. Then the second criterion is teaching, learning, and evaluation. Teaching and learning, how do you measure it? How do you assess it? How do you measure the outcome? Okay, you have the internal test, you have the end semester examination, so you have a system of assessment and evaluation. As I said earlier, a college is meant for teaching, but at the same time, a college is expected to do some research. So therefore, the third criterion is research, innovations, and extension. Extension and outreach activities, they are very important. Now, for good teaching to happen and for good learning to happen, you need a good ambience, you need a good environment, you need a good ecosystem. So the fourth criterion talks of infrastructure and learning resources. Do you have good classrooms? Do you have a good library? Do you have a good computer center? Do you have good hostels? So the fourth criterion talks about infrastructure and learning resources. Now I talked about holistic education. So what is the support system that is available in the college to promote holistic education? And for all this to happen, the principal should be good, the management should be good, the vice chancellor should be good, the administration should be good. So that is the sixth criterion, which talks about governance, leadership, and management. And ultimately and finally, the institution should have core values. Okay, your institution, it is run by the Jesuit administration. They have a fantastic key value, core value called MAGIS. So always aim for the higher, aim for excellence. So dear friends, this is an important slide because you would like to know how are colleges evaluated by NAC. For instance, a student writing an exam would ask the teacher, okay, for how many hours do I write my exam? Is it for 1 hour or for 2 hours or for 3 hours? Okay, then you clarify this is an exam for 2 hours. Then the student will ask you, for how many marks am I writing my exam? Is it for 50 marks or for 60 marks or for 200 marks or for 100 marks? Then you say this is for 100 marks. So you clarify to the students, this is an exam for 3 hours and the total marks 100. And the student also asks, okay, how is the question paper divided? Is there a part A? Is there a part B? Is there a part C? Is there a part D? Then how much weightage for part A? How much weightage for part B? So similarly, institutions, whether they are colleges or universities, when they go for NAC assessment and accreditation, they want to know on what basis institutions are assessed, on what basis, using what methodology are colleges assessed and evaluated. So the answer is all colleges in India. I repeat, all colleges in India. You could be an autonomous college, you could be an affiliated college, you could be a constituent college, you could be a college with potential for excellence, or you could be a college of excellence. Whatever may be the college, you could be situated in a rural environment, or you could be a city college. All colleges in India and similarly all universities in India are assessed by NAC or evaluated by NAC on the basis of 7 criteria. So the 7 criteria, they do not change according to institutions. For all institutions, for all colleges, for all universities, it is the same 7 criteria. So the first criterion is about curriculum and syllabus, curricular aspects. The second criterion talks about teaching and learning and exam system and evaluation. The third criterion talks about research and innovations, and it also talks about your extension and outreach activities. The fourth criterion talks about the infrastructure and the learning resources that are available to facilitate learning. The fifth criterion talks of the support system that is available for students, student support and progression. The sixth criterion talks about the administration, the governance, leadership, and management. And the seventh criterion talks of the institutional values and the best practices of the institution. So, dear friends, I would like to offer two clarifications. My first clarification: absolutely no difference, whatever may be the institution, whatever may be the college, whatever may be the university, wherever it may be situated, all institutions are assessed on the basis of 7 criteria. So the 7 criteria, they are a constant factor. They do not change. And the total weightage also does not change. So the 7 criteria, they are constant, they don't change, and the total weightage, that is 1000, and that also does not change. But what changes is how the 1000 marks are divided across institution. There is some difference. Okay, I repeat, the 7 criteria, they are a constant factor. They do not change. Whatever may be the institution, the 7 criteria, they remain the same. Similarly, whatever may be the kind of institution, the weightage also does not change. But there is a differential aspect. And what is this differential aspect? Depending upon whether it is a college or a university, depending upon whether it is an autonomous college or an affiliated college, depending upon whether it is a college that offers only undergraduate programs or a college that offers undergraduate and postgraduate programs, the way the 1000 marks are split up or divided, there is some change. Okay. Now, please look at this slide. So this slide makes it very clear for St. Xavier's College, Jaipur. Okay, for an affiliated college, what are the 7 criteria and what is the distribution of the weightage? Now, the first criterion is titled the curricular aspects. As I said earlier, it talks about your curriculum, it talks about your syllabus. Because you're an affiliating university, you do not frame the curriculum. The affiliating university frames the curriculum and passes it on to you for transaction. The weightage is only 100. In the case of a university, the weightage given for curricular aspects is a little more. And in the case of autonomous colleges also, the weightage that is given for the first criterion is a little more. The reason is very simple. In your case, in the case of an affiliating college, you do not frame the curriculum. The university frames the curriculum and gives it to you for transaction. Whereas in the case of a university and in the case of autonomous colleges, they frame their own curriculum. So therefore, the weightage is higher for the first criterion as far as universities and autonomous colleges are concerned. So for St. Xavier's College, the first criterion is curricular aspects and the weightage is 100. Now the second criterion, teaching, learning and evaluation, that carries the maximum weightage, at least in the case of affiliated and constituent colleges. So for St. Xavier's, the maximum weightage is the second criterion, for which you get 350 points. That is 35%. Teaching, learning, that is one component, and the outcome of the teaching and learning and how you measure it, evaluation, internal and external. So there are 2 components in the second criterion, and the weightage is 350, the highest. Then the third criterion. Now, as I said earlier, a university is meant for research. I repeat, a university is meant for research. A college is not meant for research. A college is meant for teaching, sharing of knowledge, transfer of knowledge, dissemination of knowledge. At the same time, a college, even if it is an undergraduate institution, even if it is an affiliated institution, it is supposed to, it is required to undertake some research, at least some research. Not that you have to compete with an IIT or an NIT or a central university when it comes to research. No. More is expected from NIT. More is expected from IITs. More is expected from central universities when it comes to research. Okay. But at the same time, you have to do some research, whether it comes to research projects or research guidance or research publications or research innovations. You have to do some research. So that is the third criterion. Plus all faculty members and all students, they should get themselves involved in extension and outreach activities. In other words, they should take care of the neighborhood. So that is the second component. And in the case of colleges offering only undergraduate programs, the weightage is 110, whereas a college like St. Xavier's, which offers both UG programs and PG programs, the weightage is 120. Now the fourth one, it talks of infrastructure and learning resources. How many classrooms are there? How many classrooms are fitted with LCDs? How many auditoriums are there? How big is the library? Do you have an athletic track? Do you have a playground? Okay, do you have a canteen? Do you have hostels? So the fourth criterion talks of infrastructure and learning resources, and the weightage that is allotted is 100. Whether it is an UG institution or a PG institution, it carries the same weightage, it is 100. Now the fifth criterion talks of student support and progression. How many of your undergraduate students go for post-graduation? And how many of your postgraduate students go for higher studies, enroll themselves for MPhil programs, go for PhD programs? How many of them take up jobs? And what is the mechanism that is available at the institution to support systems, to support students? Do you have a counselor? Do you have a placement coordinator? So the fifth criterion talks of student support and progression. In the case of an UG college, the weightage is 140, whereas in the case of a postgraduate college like St. Xavier's, the weightage is 130. Now the sixth criterion talks of administration, it talks of governance, it talks of leadership, it talks of management, and it talks of the legacy of the founder. The weightage that is allotted is 100. And the last criterion, it talks of what kind of values are being promoted by the institution, what kind of values are inculcated in your students, and what is the mechanism that is available, and what are your best practices in academics, in administration. That is the last criterion. So the weightage that is allotted is 100. So ladies and gentlemen, if you look at this slide, okay, one thing is very obvious. Your focus should be on the second criterion, because it is the second criterion, namely teaching and learning and evaluation, both internal and external, that carries the maximum weightage, that is 350 marks. And this is obvious because I made it very clear. As a college, you are not a university, you are a college, and you are an affiliating college. So therefore, your primary job, your primary responsibility is to teach and to share your knowledge, to transfer knowledge, to disseminate knowledge. And this is the major responsibility. So therefore, the weightage that is allotted for this criterion is 350. Now, please take a look at this slide. This is very interesting. I want you to remember 3 mantras. I repeat, I want you to remember 3 mantras or 3 key words. Now, how does NAAC work? How does NAAC operate? What is the methodology? What are the parameters that are employed by NAAC when the NAAC peer team visits St. Xavier's College, Jaipur for assessment and accreditation? As I said earlier, the student will ask the teacher whether the exam is for 2 hours or for 3 hours, whether it is for 60 marks or 100 marks, whether there are 3 sections or 2 sections, and how many part A questions, how many part B questions, and how many essay questions, how many MCQs. So similarly, you would like to know what is the methodology that NAAC employs when it comes to assessment of institutions. Please remember 3 terms. Number 1, criteria. And I have talked about the 7 criteria, and I also made it very clear for all institutions, the criteria are the same. And the total weightage also is the same, but the way the 100 marks, they are split up, that there is a difference according to the kind of institution. So there are 7 criteria, and these 7 criteria, they are further divided into key indicators. In the case of universities and autonomous colleges, they have 34 key indicators each. Whereas in the case of affiliated and constituent colleges, in a college that offers only undergraduate programs, there are 31 key indicators. Whereas for you, St. Xavier's Jaipur, you have 7 criteria and you have 32 key indicators. Next, we talk of metrics. And we talk of two kinds of metrics, two categories of metrics. We have qualitative metrics on the one hand, and we have quantitative metrics on the other. Now, what is the difference between the two? Now, for instance, there is a question. How many staff members at St. Xavier's College, Jaipur have PhD degrees? Now, what kind of a question is this? This is a question that comes under quantitative metrics. Okay, in other words, this is something to do with data, hard data, numerical data. You say 37 teachers have PhD degrees, or 57% of our teachers have PhD degrees. Or I'll give you one more example. Among your students, what is the percentage of girl students and what is the percentage of male students and male and female students, for which you have to give number, numerical data, statistical data. So therefore, anything to do with number, anything to do with percentage, anything to do with numerical data, that will come under qualitative metrics. For instance, you go to the last criterion. There is a question, what are your best practices when it comes to teaching? Okay, then you say something that cannot be measured. So therefore, it is not quantitative. On the contrary, it is qualitative. So metrics are divided into two categories. On the one hand, we have qualitative metrics, and on the other, we have quantitative. Anything that can be measured, anything that can be converted into number, numerical data, and percentages, that is quantitative. And anything that cannot be talked about in terms of number, percentages, that is qualitative metrics. And please remember, whether it is a university or a college, whether it is an autonomous college or an affiliated college, for all institutions, we have more number of quantitative metrics and less number of qualitative metrics. I repeat, for all categories of institutions, starting from central universities right down to an affiliated college in a rural setup, you have more quantitative metrics and less qualitative metrics. And you may ask, or you may want to know the reason, why does NAC have more number of quantitative metrics and less number of qualitative metrics? The answer is very simple. In order to be fair, in order to be objective, and in order to be transparent, NAC has brought in the revised methodology. I was one of the members of the committee that revised the framework. So in the new methodology, in the revised methodology, we have more quantitative metrics, because once it is presented in the form of data and percentages, it is transparent and it is objective. Okay, so therefore, dear friends, this is an important slide. So I want you to become familiar. I want you to become conversant with three key terms. And what are the three key terms? Criteria. So NAC operates on the basis of 7 criteria. The NAC operates on the basis of key indicators. Every criteria has 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 key indicators, depending on the criterion. So as far as your institution is concerned, you have 32 key indicators and of course 7 criteria. Then you have metrics. Now for St. Xavier's College, Jaipur, you have 96 metrics, and these 96 metrics are divided into 60 quantitative metrics and 36 qualitative metrics. And what is the key difference between a qualitative and a quantitative metrics? Anything to do with number, anything that can be quantified, anything that can be measured, anything that can be converted into numerical data, that is quantitative. Anything that cannot be measured as such, that is qualitative. Now, please look at this. This is for affiliated and constituent colleges. Your college will fit in this scheme. So what are the 7 criteria? That is the first column. And what are the quantitative metrics? How many quantitative metrics under each criterion? What are the qualitative metrics? How many in each criterion? And what is the total number of metrics under each criterion? So for St. Xavier's College, Jaipur, The first criterion is curricular aspects. You have 8 quantitative metrics and 3 qualitative metrics with regard to the first criterion. So the first criterion, you have 11 metrics. For the second criterion, which talks about teaching, learning, and evaluation, you have 16 metrics. For the third criterion, which talks about research and innovations on the one hand and extension and outreach activities on the other, you have 14 metrics, 12 quantitative and 2 qualitative. For the fourth criterion, which talks of the physical facilities available on campus, you have 13, and these 13 are divided into 8 quantitative and 5 qualitative. The fifth criterion, which talks of the mechanism available on the campus to support students in their progression, you have 13 key metrics, 11 quantitative and 2 qualitative. The sixth criterion, which talks of the administration, it has 16 metrics, 10 qualitative and 6 quantitative. The last one, which talks of the institutional values and best practices, totally 13, 7 qualitative and 6 quantitative. So please remember, there are 7 criteria. For the first criteria, for the first 5 criteria, I repeat, for the first 5 criteria, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, more quantitative and less qualitative. Whereas when we come to the last 2 criteria, criterion 6, which talks about the administration, and criterion 7, which talks about the institutional values and best practices, we have slightly more qualitative and less qualitative. Fine. Now, dear friends, for the next 20 minutes, what I plan to do is, I would like to talk about each criterion in a detailed manner. What should you do? What should the administration do? What should the staff members do? I will not talk about it today. I will talk about it tomorrow. But here, what are the criteria? What are the key indicators, and what are the metrics, and what is expected in general? I will talk about it very briefly. Now, the first criterion is titled curricular aspects. It talks about curriculum, and this is an important curriculum. Why? Because a college is meant for teaching and learning. And in order for good teaching and learning to take place, you need to have a good curriculum, a good syllabus. Of course, you are not an autonomous college. Had you been an autonomous college, you should be designing, you should be framing your own curriculum. But since you are an affiliated college, the affiliating university that prepares the curriculum, and the curriculum is sent to you, and all that you have to do is you have to transact the curriculum in your classroom. So the first criterion, it focuses on curriculum or syllabus. As we all know, curriculum is an American word and syllabus is a British word. Syllabus has a narrow meaning or a narrow connotation, whereas curriculum, a slightly broader connotation. It is used by the American institutions, and it goes a little beyond syllabus, and that is why it is called curriculum. So we have 4 key indicators. Now 1.1, curriculum design and development. I have struck it off. Some of you may be wondering, some of you may want to ask me, why did I strike it off? The reason is obvious. Since you are not an autonomous college, you do not design curriculum. You are only an affiliated college. The university designs the curriculum and sends it to you. So therefore, curriculum design and development 1.1 does not apply to you. Instead, you have curricular planning and implementation. For BA English, for BBA, for BSc Mathematics, for MA English, for MSc Chemistry, for MSc Life Sciences, whatever may be the course, the affiliating university frames the curriculum and gives it to you, and you have to implement it. So how well do you implement the curriculum that has been framed by the university? So that is 1.1, and the weightage that is allotted is 20. Now 1.2 talks of academic flexibility. Now what do we mean by academic flexibility? There are 2 dimensions. Number 1, you go to some of you go to universities and you go to some colleges. They have introduced what is called CBCS. I repeat, all universities and some colleges, they have introduced, they have implemented what is called the CBCS, choice-based credit system. So what is CBCS? Choice-based credit system. In the West, it is called the cafeteria model. Imagine I go to the canteen with my wife and daughter. I may like to eat idli and sambar, whereas my wife may like to eat idli, sambar and vadai, whereas my daughter may like to eat sambar and dosai and sambar. So which means each one, according to his or taste, will choose the menu. So similarly, students will choose the courses that they want to attend. Okay, now the students cannot choose everything. We have what is called major courses and we have what is called elective courses. So the major courses, the core courses, they are common. When it comes to elective courses, when it comes to optional course, student A may choose something, student B may choose something, student C may choose something. So this is facilitated by what is called CBCS, choice-based credit system. I do not know if St. Xavier's College Jaipur has already implemented CBCS. Mostly autonomous colleges implement CBCS, but NAC wants all institutions to go in for choice-based credit system. The major advantage of the choice-based credit system is, as I said earlier, in the West, this is known as cafeteria model. I like coffee, you may like tea. So there is flexibility. My choice is tea, your choice is coffee. So that is the cafeteria model. So it ensures academic flexibility. And there is one more dimension to academic flexibility. In addition to the degree programs that you run, whether it is an undergraduate program or a postgraduate program, how many diploma courses do you run? How many certificate courses do you run, particularly outside the class hours? BA English, BSc Mathematics, MBA, BBA, these are all degree programs. Okay, but how many certificate course? Okay, for instance, the Department of English, you can have a certificate course in spoken English. The Department of Computer Science, we can organize a certificate course in Tally. The Department of Home Science, we can offer a certificate course in baking technology. So 1.2 talks about academic flexibility, and academic flexibility means two things. Number one, the introduction of the choice-based credit system and flexibility in terms of certificate and diploma courses. And this is also covered by 1.3 curriculum enrichment. The curriculum is given to you by the university. You cannot change the curriculum. You have to transact the curriculum. You have to implement the curriculum. But you can think of certificate courses. You can think of diploma courses. In addition to regular classroom teaching and learning, you can think of seminars, student seminars. You can think of workshops, student workshops. You can think of educational tours. All these will come under curriculum enrichment. And the last key indicator in the first criterion is 1.4 feedback system. I want to know how I teach, whether whatever I teach reaches the students. How much does it reach? 10%, 60%, 70%. So I need to get feedback from the students. So there are two kinds of feedback. Feedback on the courses taught and feedback on the course teachers. I repeat, there are two kinds of feedback. Feedback on the courses, on the programs. This is one kind of feedback. The other feedback is feedback on the teacher. Is the teacher punctual? Does the teacher prepare well? Does the teacher return answer scripts? And how soon or how late? All these will constitute the feedback system, and feedback system is mandatory, and this is the job of the IQAC, and you can do it manually or you can do it online. Now, most institutions, they do it online. So dear friends, the first criterion is curricular aspects. It talks about the curriculum that is framed by the affiliating university, and the job of the affiliating college is to implement the curriculum, to transact the curriculum, and you can implement the curriculum in a better way if you have introduced a choice-based credit system, and if you have also introduced certificate courses and diploma courses, and where there is a sound mechanism or a system for collecting feedback both on the courses taught and on the teachers. So this is about the first criterion. And in the first criterion, there are totally 11 metrics, 3 qualitative and 8 quantitative. Fine. Next, we move to the second criterion. As I said earlier, this is the most important criterion for 2 reasons. Why is the second criterion the most important? For 2 reasons. Reason number 1, what is the job of a college? A job of a college is different from the job of a university. A university is meant primarily for research, and this is why Humboldt, it is called the Humboldtian model. They are called the teaching and research university. So research is the mandate of a university, whereas a college, particularly an affiliating college, your focus is not research, your focus is teaching and learning, but you're also supposed to undertake some research. So the second criterion is important for 2 reasons. Why? The job of a college is to teach, and the second reason why the second criterion is important is it is here that you get the maximum scores. If you do well in the second criterion, you get a good grade. Unfortunately, if you do badly in the second criterion, that pulls down your score. So your focus should be on the second criterion. So the second criterion has 2 compartments, has 2 components. Teaching and learning, that is one component. The other component is evaluation, assessment and evaluation, both internal and external. And it has 7 key indicators. So 2.1 talks about student enrollment and profile. What category of students join your college? Do you get men students? Do you get women students? Do you get more women and less men? Or do you get more men and less women? Do you get students only from Jaipur? Or do you get students from other parts of Rajasthan? Like how many students are there from Bikaner? How many students are there from Ajmer? Are you able to attract students from outside the state? What kind of students enroll for your programs? Are they economically on the brighter side, or do you get students from the poorer communities also? So in other words, 2.1 talks of the category of students or the kind of students that join your institution. So student enrollment and profile, so it is 40 students. And 2.2, catering to student diversity. In all institutions, whether it is a college or a university, whether it is an autonomous college or it is or an affiliated college, you get students with different skill sets. You get clever students, you get average students, and you get poor students. Students who are very bright and students who are dull. So you have advanced learners and you have slow learners. Now, what does a good teacher do? A good teacher caters to the needs of both bright students and at the same time average learners and slow learners. So therefore, the college should have a sound mechanism to cater to the needs of all categories of students. It is not enough that I focus only on the bright students. I should focus on the bright students. I should also focus on the average learners, and I should also focus on the dull students, the slow learners or the slow achievers. This is taken care of by 2.2, catering to student diversity. Then 2.3, it talks of the teaching and learning process. What kind of methodologies do teachers employ when it comes to learning? Do I rely completely on chalk and talk, or do I bring in technology? Today we talk of blended learning, flipped classrooms, and because of the pandemic, all of us are moved to teaching online. So how well do I integrate technology in my teaching and learning process? So 2.3, the focus is on teaching and learning process and the integration of technology in the teaching and learning process, the weightage that is allotted is 50. Now 2.4, it carries a lot of weightage. 60 marks are given for this key indicator. The kind of teachers that St. Xavier's Jaipur attracts. How many of you have got PhDs? How many have passed NET? How many have passed SET? How many have passed national level exams? How many have got research projects? How many have got research publications? So teacher profile and quality, that carries 60 marks. Then 2.5, so 2.1, 2, 3, 4, that talks of the first component, namely teaching and learning. Then the next two key indicators, namely 2.5 and 2.6, they talk of evaluation, internal assessment and evaluation, both internal and external evaluation process and reforms. Obviously, you can't do much because the university prescribes the curriculum and the university also prescribes the evaluation pattern. Okay, but for an autonomous college, you can have your own evaluation pattern, you can have your own examination system. So therefore, the weightage is a little higher for evaluation process and reforms. But in your case, the university dictates what you should do. So the weightage is only 30. Now, when results are published, how many of your students get first class? How many get second class? How many fail? How many get university rankings? And how many of your students get good marks so that they can go for postgraduate programs, they can go for research? So that is taken care of by 2.6, student performance and learning outcomes. How many first class? How many second class? How many failures? What is the pass percentage? Is it better than other colleges in Jaipur? Where do you stand when the university publishes the results? So all these are taken care of in 2.6. Then 2.7, student satisfaction survey, and this is done after the college submits the self-study report. I repeat, student satisfaction survey, it is not the job of the college, it is the job of NAC. NAC will directly contact your students, 10% of your students. This is after you submit your self-study report. And NAC would ask them 15 objective type questions and one open-ended question. So 10% of your total students, they are contacted directly by NAC through online, through an email. So the student satisfaction survey is an important component and 60 marks are allotted. So dear friends, criterion 2 is important for two reasons. Reason number one, the job of a college is to teach, not so much to do research. So therefore, the second criterion is important. There is an additional reason as to why the second criterion is important, because it is here you can score marks. 350 marks are allotted for the second criterion. So if you get good marks here, it will naturally boost your grade. It will automatically enhance your grade. Whereas if you do badly in this second criterion, and even if you do well in the other criteria, then it is difficult to get A or A+. Okay, so therefore you should focus on the second criterion. And the second criterion, totally there are 16 metrics, and these 16 metrics are divided into qualitative 7 and quantitative 9. And for quantitative, the weightage that is allotted is 225. The third criterion is research. I have already made it abundantly clear. A university is meant for research. IITs are meant for research. Central universities are meant for research. NITs are meant for research. Autonomous colleges are required to undertake research, not so much affiliated colleges. That doesn't mean that you can ignore research. No. Even though you are an affiliated college, you have to do some research. So therefore, the third criterion is called research and innovations, the first part of it, and the second part of it, extension and outreach activities. And for St. Xavier's College, Jaipur, the weightage is 120. And you have, since you are a PG postgraduate institution, you have 5 key indicators. The first key indicator is 3.2. Look at the first one, promotion of research and facilities. I have struck it off. NAC has struck it off. because it does not apply to you. This applies to universities and this applies to autonomous colleges, not so much to affiliated colleges. So 3.2 talks of resource mobilization for research. And what does NAC mean by this? When you get a project from UGC, when you get a research project from UGC, you get some funds. When you get a research project from DST, Department of Science and Technology, you get some research grants. When you get some project from ICSR, Indian Council for Historical Research, you get some funds. So how do you generate funds through your research project? So that is taken care of by 3.2, resource mobilization for research. And innovation ecosystem. Innovation ecosystem, this will apply largely to universities and autonomous colleges, marginally to affiliated colleges. In other words, what they are asking is the environment in the college, is the ecosystem in the college, is the atmosphere in the college conducive for research and innovations? If you want to innovate something, particularly in science departments, is there an friendly atmosphere? Does the college environment, does the college administration, does the laboratory in the college, in your own department, do all these promote research and innovations? That is what they mean by innovation ecosystem. And for UG, this is NA, not applicable. Only for postgraduate institution, it is applicable. The weightage is 10. Then you are supposed to publish papers, particularly in peer-reviewed journals. And recently, the UGC has introduced a special category of journals called the CARE journal, C-A-R-E. C-A-R-E, meaning peer-reviewed, standard journal. So everyone, every staff member, whether you're permanent or ad hoc, whether you teach sciences or humanities, every staff member every year is required to publish papers in peer-reviewed journals. So 3.4 talks of peer research publications and the research awards that you have won for your books, for your projects, for your research paper, for your patent. Then 3.5 talks of consultancy. And in the revised format, in the revised accreditation format, NAC has made it very clear. Let us not bother affiliated colleges with consultancy, because in order to offer consultancy, you should be strong in research, you should have good laboratories, you should have staff members with PhDs and postdoc experience. So therefore, NAC does not want to overload college teachers with consultancy. So consultancy, you need not worry about consultancy. But 3.6 extension activities are very important. All staff members, all departments, all staff members, and all students are supposed to go to the neighborhood villages or the neighborhood slums or the neighborhood schools and carry out some extension and outreach activities. And 3.7, you are an institution, but you cannot work in isolation. I repeat, as an institution, you cannot work in isolation. You need the support of other institutions, and you also need to offer support to other institutions. So therefore, you need to sign MOUs, Memorandum of Understanding, either for research work or for library purposes or for using physical infrastructure facilities or for exchange of professors or for exchange of students, MOUs. So that is taken care of by 3.7 collaboration. So dear friends, the third criterion talks of research and innovations on the one hand and extension and outreach activities on the other. I would like to point out two things. Universities are meant for research. Colleges are not meant for research, but at the same time, colleges have to do some research. And what do I mean by some research? Even though you may not take up research projects from UGC or DST, every staff member should have at least a few publications in peer-reviewed journals. This is very important. And the second dimension is all departments, all staff members, and all students should be involved in extension and outreach activity. So therefore, the third criterion, it has 11 metrics, 110 points, and 10 quantitative for which the weightage is 100, and only 1 qualitative metric for which the weightage is 10. Now we go to the fourth criterion. Now, as I said earlier, for good learning to take place, for good research to take place, for students to study well, obviously the infrastructure is very important. Without good classrooms, without good library, without a good computer center, you cannot train students in their respective disciplines. So the fourth criterion talks of infrastructure and learning resources, basically 3 key factors: classrooms, laboratories, and the computer center. So these are the 3 key facilities academically. And non-academically, you need playgrounds, you need canteen, and you need hostel facilities. So the fourth criterion has 4 key indicators. 4.1 talks of physical facilities, mainly classrooms and laboratories. 4.2 talks of library. Library would mean how many books are there, how many journals are there, are you part of any system, particularly the InflibNet? I will talk about it tomorrow. And how much of online resources do you have? And in order to access online resources, e-resources, particularly Shodhganga, okay, how many systems are there with Wi-Fi in the computer? In the library? All these are taken care of by 4.2. Then 4.3, IT infrastructure. Is your campus a Wi-Fi enabled campus? How many computers are there and what is the configuration? Then maintenance. I know the Jesuits are known for maintenance of campus and maintenance of equipment also. So the fourth criterion is important. It talks of the physical facilities, particularly classrooms, the library, and the computers. Now the fourth criterion talks of 15 metrics, and these 15 metrics are divided into 6 qualitative for which the weightage is 39, and 9 quantitative database metrics for which the weightage is 61. Now the fifth criterion talks of student support and progression. What do we mean by this? We mean three things. Number one, how many of your UG students go for postgraduate programs, and how many of your postgraduate programs go for research programs? Number one. Number two, how many of your students take up jobs, particularly through campus recruitment and on their own? Number two. Number three, how do you help students, particularly through mentoring and counseling? Students with problems, academic problems, personal problems, emotional problems, how are they helped? Mentoring, counseling. So these are the 3 dimensions. So 5.1 talks of student support. 5.2, student support would mean mentoring, guidance, counseling. Do you have a professional counselor, or do students or do teachers double up as counselors? So all these are taken care of by the first key indicator. The second key indicator talks of the progression of students, UG to PG, PG to MPhil, MPhil to PhD. So that is student progression. And I am sure all departments have departmental clubs or departmental associations where you promote curricular activities, co-curricular activities, and extracurricular activities. So 5.3 talks of student participation and activities, both within the college and outside the college. Some other college in Jaipur or some other college, Sophia College is in Ajmer, is organizing a program, a cultural program, or a student seminar. Do you send your students for those programs? So 5.3 talks of student participation and activities, and 5.4 talks of alumni engagement. St. Xavier's College, Jaipur, do you have an alumni association? If yes, is it a registered body? Who is the president? Who is the secretary? What are the activities? What have they done? In what sense have they contributed? All these I will talk tomorrow. So criterion 5 talks of student support and progression, and there are 4 key indicators. There are 13 metrics, 11 quantitative and 2 quantitative. Next, we go to the sixth criterion. It talks about the administration. It talks about the Jesuit management. It talks about the principal. It talks about the vice principal. It talks about the deans, the heads of departments, and the IQAC coordinator. So it has 5 key indicators. The first one talks of the institutional vision and leadership. Who are the Jesuits? What is their motto? What is their vision? Then why and when was St. Xavier's College, Jaipur founded, established? What was the mandate given to the college? What is the vision? What is the vision and mission? So that is 6.1. Now, in order to fulfill the dreams of the founder, what strategies does the administration, what strategies do the different departments employ, deploy? Okay, so that is taken care of by 6.2, strategy, development, and deployment. Then how does the management, how does the administration, particularly how does the principal and secretary, how does Father Rex empower the teaching staff? Okay, now for instance, this FTP is one stretch strategy. So through this FTP, the management, the Jesuit management, the principal is empowering you so that you gain a clear knowledge of what is NAC and how NAC works, how NAC operates, how NAC assesses institutions, the methodology that is employed. So FTPs are important tools to empower the faculty. Then 6.4, financial management and resource mobilization. Okay, since you're not an aided institution, financially you have to support yourself. So where do the funds come from? That is, and how are they used? Is there an audit? Is there an audit objection? All these are taken care of by 6.4. And the last one is an important one, an important component. It talks of the internal quality assurance system. It does not talk about the internal quality assurance cell. It talks about the system. Okay, so whether it is the management or the department or the individual teachers, there is a system, there is a mechanism which focuses on quality. And this is what Father Principal said during his opening remarks. There should be a culture of quality. There should be a culture of excellence. And once you establish a culture of excellence on campus, whether it is the individual departments or the individual teachers or the individual heads of departments, whatever they do, they have an eye on quality. And as far as the sixth criterion is concerned, it has 16 metrics, but please note, unlike criterion 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, the sixth criterion and also the seventh criterion, only these two criteria, 6 and 7, more qualitative and less qualitative. Now, I have been telling you criteria 1 to 5, more quantitative, data-based metrics and less qualitative, whereas in the case of criterion 6 and criterion 7, we are more qualitative and less quantitative. What does it mean? What are the implications? What are the ramifications? There are two implications. And what are the two implications? Number one, whatever you do, or most of what you do with regard to the sixth criterion and the seventh criterion, they cannot be quantified. They cannot be converted into numbers or percentages. They are not very perceptible because it is qualitative. And the second ramification is, after you submit your SSR and after your SSR is validated and verified, when the peer team visits your college for an on-site inspection, we call it the peer team visit, the NAC peer team visit. A 3-member committee will be visiting your college. They will be focusing on, of course, they will be focusing on all the 7 criteria, but they will be focusing on the 7th criterion and the 6th criterion and the 7th criterion for an obvious reason, for a very simple reason. In the case of the 6th and in the case of the 7th criterion, there are more qualitative and less quantitative. So in other words, when I go for NAC, when I go to colleges and universities as a NAC peer team member, particularly according to the revised methodology, the guideline is don't look into the quantitative metrics, because the quantitative metrics, they have already been validated and verified by a third party. So the peer team is looked into, this is the guideline given to the peer team. They are asked to look into not so much the quantitative metrics, but the qualitative metrics. So therefore, from that point of view, this is an important criterion. We go to the last criterion. The last criterion, it is divided into two parts: institutional values. The idea is imparting ethical and value-based education. That is the first part, 50 marks for that. And the remaining 50 marks, it talks about your best practices and institutional distinctiveness. Now, when you talk of an ethical and value-based education, it can mean so many things. It can mean different things to different people. But NAC wants you to focus on 5 major issues. Number one, it wants you to focus on women empowerment, gender equity. So value-based education would mean you give equal allotment to women candidates during admission, gender equity and women empowerment, 10 marks. Then today we talk of global warming and environmental sustainability. So environmental consciousness and sustainability, a green campus, a green audit, that is the second dimension in value-based education, 10 marks. Then the physically disabled students. Do you admit physically disabled students? And after admitting physically disabled students, okay, do you support them both physically and attitudinally? So that is the third dimension. Then inclusion and situatedness. Inclusion, do you admit students from all categories, economic and social? And situatedness, what have you done for the environment? What have we done for the context where you're located? And lastly, it talks of human values and professional ethics for the students and for the staff. Okay, so this is the first part of the 6th criterion, ethical and value-based education. The second part of it talks about your best practices. Okay, academically, what is your best practices? Or when it comes to evaluation, what is your best practices? When it comes to finances, what is your best practices? When it comes to extension, what is your best practice? Okay, so every department should have its own best practices, and the college as such, you should have best practices. You can have any number of best practices, but when you write the report, when you write your SSR, NAC wants you to list 2 of your best practices. Okay, and NAC tells you it can be in any field, it can be in any domain. Okay, but what I would suggest is, as a NAC peer team member, I am associated with NAC for more than 10 years. Now, what I would suggest is NAC wants you to list 2 of your best practices. One could be academics, teaching or research or learning or knowledge transfers, or one best practice related to your academics. The other could be non-academics, particularly related to extension and social responsibility. Okay, I mean, this is only a suggestion. This is what most institutions do. A+ or A++ institutions, you look at their best practices, 2 best practices. One is related to academics, teaching, learning, and research, and the other invariably is related to extension and outreach activities. And finally, NAC wants you, what is special about your college? What is unique about your college? What is it that you have? What is it that other institutions do not have? And what is it that you have? So it talks of institutional distinctiveness or uniqueness. And that is the last one. And as I said earlier, this criterion also invites the attention of the peer team when they visit you, because you have more qualitative metrics and less quantitative metrics. Okay. Now, the process of, now that I have talked about the 7 criteria, very briefly, I would like to talk about the process of assessment and accreditation. There are 6 stages. Okay. Now the first one is, now a student applying to St. Xavier's College, Jaipur. What should that student do? The student wants to join BBA. What should that student do? He or she should buy an application or download the application and submit it. Similarly, when you want to go for assessment and accreditation, you should send a letter in the prescribed format. This is called IIQA, Institutional Information for Quality Assessment. Just like a student submitting an application for admission and enrollment, the college should also submit an application to NAAC. And NAAC will approve it, provided the application is in the prescribed format and according to NAAC guidelines. Once NAAC approves, then you will have to prepare an SSR, self-study report. That has to be prepared by the college, not to be outsourced. You have to write it, you have to prepare it, and it is in two parts. The quantitative metrics separately and the qualitative metrics separately. The quantitative metrics, okay, that has to be submitted separately. That goes for what is called data verification and validation, DVV. It is done by a third party. NAAC has given it to third party. So they go through your data, they validate. For instance, in your website, you say there are 112 staff members and your SSR says there are only 97 staff members. NAAC, the DVV through NAAC will send you a query. There is a discrepancy. Your website gives you one set of data, whereas your SSR gives you a separate set of data, which is true, which is false. So you need to validate it. So that is called data verification and validation. And once you submit your SSR, NAAC will undertake what is known as SSS, Student Satisfaction Survey. NAAC will directly contact 10% of your students through email, and an online assessment form is submitted. Then finally, when everything is okay, then this is stage number 5. NAAC will send a 3-member peer team for on-site visit, for on-site inspection, and this is for 2 days, roughly 1.5 days. This is called peer team visit. Then there is the certification file. And the last 3 slides, I will take 5 more minutes. How are the grades calculated? I started my presentation with the student asking, what is the question paper like? How many sections are there? For how many hours do I write and how many marks? How many marks does part A carry? How many marks for part B? How many marks for part C? So the student wants to know how he or she is assessed. How many 2-mark questions, how many paragraph questions, how many essay questions. So similarly, when an institution is assessed and the grades are calculated, how is this done? So institution should know. Now, there are 3 procedures. Number 1, quantitative data, the numerical data, that is DVV. Quantitative data, numerical data. Okay, so whatever you submit to your DVV, scores will be generated, computer generated scores, system generated scores. So this is one part of it. Then NAAC will conduct what is known as student satisfaction survey. In your case, 60 marks are calculated, 60 marks are allotted for student satisfaction survey. So this is the second component. And the third component is roughly 30 to 35% of the marks, they are given by the peer team member. So all the 3 will put together. This is like a question paper having part A, part B, and part C. So the assessment is the quantitative scores, they will be higher, roughly 60 to 65%. Student satisfaction survey, which carries only 60%, which carries only 60, so therefore 6%. Then the remaining 30 to 35%, that is by the peer team. So you put them together, you get the scores. And very quickly, very briefly, how are the scores calculated? Please remember the scores are calculated on the basis of 5-point Likert scale. I repeat, how are the scores calculated? The scores are calculated on the basis of the 5-point Likert scale. where the range is from 0 to 4. 0 is very bad, 1 is bad, 2 is average, 3 is good, and 4 is very good. I repeat, scores are calculated on the basis of a 5-point Likert scale, where 0 is very poor and 4 is very good. In between, you have 2 where it is average. Okay, for instance, 2.21 is perspective plan. It is a qualitative metric and the weightage is 2. Now, if the perspective plan would mean the college has already foreseen what it would do in the next 5 years, what it would do in the next 20 years, what it would do in the next 40 years. So the college has prepared a plan for the future, a perspective plan, also known as a vision document, where the short-term goals and the long-term goals have been clearly articulated. Okay, so if the perspective plan is good, then let us say if it is good, you will get 3. If it is very good, you will get 4. So the weightage is 2. So if it is very good, 2 into 4, 8. If it is only good, not very good, so it will be 2 into 3, 6. If the college has not prepared any vision document, it gets only a 0. So 2 into 0, 0. So please remember the scores are calculated on the basis of a 5-point scale. 0 is very poor and 4 is very good. Okay, fine. Now my last slide is what you should do and what you should not do. What should you do? 2 things. Number 1, please remember the first 2 criterion put together. The first criterion talks about curriculum and the second criterion talks about teaching, learning, and evaluation. I want you to focus on the first 2. Not that you should neglect, not that you should marginalize the other 5 criteria, the remaining 5 criteria. No, you pay attention, but more attention, more emphasis, more weightage to the first 2 criterion. So therefore, the first 2 criterion need to be focused, and not all key indicators are equally important. Okay, now when it's exam time, we tell our students, this is not an important question, so don't spend too much time and energy. This is an important question, so spend more time and energy. Oh, this carries only 2 marks, whereas this carries 10 marks. This is an essay question. So similarly, we should find out which key indicators carry more weightage and which key indicators carry less weightage. So you should prioritize. Now, I know a lot of institutions where they are focusing on key indicators which do not carry much weightage. For instance, in one institution which I visited, they did a lot of work as far as the key indicator alumni engagement was concerned. The principal was opening alumni chapters in this district, alumni chapters in this district, and outside the state, outside the country. When I asked her why so much efforts, she says, no, alumni chapter, alumni engagement is important for NAC. I said, yes, it is important, but it carries only 10 points. So even if you do extraordinary well, how much will you get? You will get only 7 or 8 or 9. So therefore, prioritize. Okay, fine. Now, the third suggestion that I would like to give you is, okay, a college that has got A+, or that a college that has got A++. So you would like to know on what basis did this college get A+? What is so special? What is so significant? What is so outstanding about this institution that it has got A+, that it has got A++? So which means academically or in the field of extension or in the field of research or in the field of administration, they have some healthy practices, they have some outstanding practices. So your institution can imitate some of those outstanding practices, not imitating blindly. Of course, you can customize it. So find out what is extraordinary about an A+ or an A++ institution. What is it that I can imitate? What is it that I can bring to my institution? And finally, what I would suggest is, on any account, I am sure Jesuit institution, Jesuit values will not allow this. Don't fabricate data, don't create data, don't fudge data. And finally, my advice is, the data should match, whether it is for NAC or NARF or All India Survey of Higher Education, the data should match. And my last slide, this is how NAC certifies institution. This is how NAC grades institutions. So if you get a score of 3.51 to 4, you get A++. If it is 3.26 to 3.5, you get A+. And if it is 3.01 to 3.25, you should A. Now I am sure St. Xavier's College, Jaipur, under the leadership of Reverend Dr. Rex Angelo, will certainly get A. You aim for A+, and I am sure you will get at least an A. And my best wishes to you. I thank Reverend Dr. Rex Angelo and the IQAC coordinator, Dr. Yashwardhan, for this opportunity. So today I talked about NAC, and tomorrow my plan is, what should you do? What should St. Xavier's College do with regard to each criterion, with regard to each of the 7 criteria, so that you get better scores in the NAC assessment and accreditation. So thank you very much. And if there are some questions, I will be happy to answer them. Thank you and wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, sir, for such an enlightening and clear presentation, and sharing the mantras with us and the mandates that we, being the affiliated college, should follow upon. And your suggestions we'll definitely focus upon, and fixing our priorities for preparation of our SSR, and having a clear set vision for our institution. So I would like to request Father, if you wish to add anything to today's session.
Thanks, Professor Joe, for the very inspiring and enlightening and very lucid presentation, because most of the things are there in the website, but certain practical guidelines you have given, which I appreciate very much. The session which we had, the 2-hour session, unfortunately with the breaks, unfortunately due to the technical snacks, in spite of that, we were able to give a kind of picture about what is expected for a good scoring by NAC. Being a veteran NAC assessor yourself, your expertise will be very useful. And then I look forward to some more insight, very practical guidelines tomorrow. So thanks a lot for the wonderful session.
Thank you, Father. In tomorrow's session, I'll be with regard to each criterion, I'll be giving you some practical tips. What should be done with regard to criterion 1? What should be done with regard to criterion 3? So for every criterion, I'll be giving you some practical tips. What do the peer members expect? What should be done? So I'll be talking more in practical terms tomorrow. So today's purpose was to give you an overview of NAC assessment and accreditation. Against this backdrop, we will go into each criterion individually tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. So we'll continue with the learning session tomorrow, and tomorrow we'll open the session for the question and answers if the staff has in any of the specific criteria. So thank you so much, sir. See you tomorrow again. Have a nice day.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Looking forward to meeting you tomorrow at 11 o'clock. I'll be logging and at 10:50. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Bakshi. Thank you. Thank you, Father Rex. We will meet you tomorrow.